Hello everyone, welcome to today's webinar entitled Are You a Leader or a Dictator? And just before we get started, I will introduce myself. My name is Melissa Barrier. I am with Sharper Edge Professionals. We do offer a business leadership webinar series, and this is the first of the 8 webinars, and I will talk more about the upcoming webinars at the end of today's presentation. So let's go ahead and get started here. And one of the things just to start thinking about is, are you a leader or are you a dictator in your job, in your role, in your personal life? Do people follow you because they like you and they trust you and they're loyal to you? Or do they follow you because they're scared of you, or you have higher items over their head as far as, are you the CEO of a company and your employees are somewhat scared of you, of losing their job, so they just do what they're told out of fear? So we're going to go ahead and talk a little bit about what a leader is and, how to use your skills to be more positive, and what that results in as far as better loyalty, because your employees may be with you right now, but if the job market turns better, they may be one of the first ones out the door, and that's not what you want as a leader within your company as well. So let's go ahead and get started here. And so they say that leaders are born, they're not made. So while it's true that some people are born leaders, some are leaders that are born in the midst of adversity. So if a situation arises, they automatically become a leader. So it's not necessarily your person you thought who went to MBA school or who graduated from Harvard or be voted most popular, etc., etc. So we're just going to talk briefly about what today's webinar objectives are. So by the end of this webinar, we're going to define what leadership is, use some transformational under leadership, understand the people you lead, and how to adapt your leadership styles. We're going to explain by leading, by directing, coaching, participating, and delegating, and conduct a personal inventory, create an action plan, and establish your personal goals. So to defining leadership, that is defined as the capacity to establish direction and to influence and align others toward a common goal. You want to motivate and commit them to action, and you want to make them responsible for their performance. So while the whole theory and practice of leadership really hasn't evolved since the beginning of time, you have one person as the front helm with some sort of hierarchy all the way down to your foot soldiers. But it is important to understand why very different leadership styles can be effective at different times, and why the same leadership techniques will not work in every situation. And then we'll look at how each leadership style fits your personality best. So let's just go ahead and take a few minutes, look at some of the characteristics of a leader. So we've got honesty, they're competent, they're very forward-looking, a visionary, inspiring, right? That's very important as well. Intelligent is perceived intelligence as well. So you don't have to be the MIT graduate, but you do have to have your people below you who perceive you as intelligent and they trust where you're taking them. You have to be fair-minded, broad-minded, courageous, straightforward, and sometimes imaginative. So some of the leadership principles we can talk about here, and as we go through here, start thinking about your role and your position that you want to improve, whether it's you within your professional world in a company, any perhaps volunteer organizations you're with. Can be also within your household. What are some of these strategies you can look, just to, it's always difficult to get kids and teenagers to follow you. So maybe these are some ideas, so you can take away some of these ideas as well. So one is to be tactically and technically proficient. You need to know yourself, and you need to seek self-improvement. One of the things we learned in MBA school is you cannot be the perfect person at every single subject matter within a company. There's a reason there's the accounting specialist, there's a finance specialist, there's the operations specialist, there's the marketing specialist, and the human resources. One person simply cannot know everything about the best practices for all of those various areas. But one of the things that we're taught is you have the smart people around you that you know that they can handle those different areas of responsibility. So when you have a question, you can go to those people and you can get your answers. Now, you do have to be educated enough to understand the general concepts, the bird's eye view of what they're talking about. But as far as the smaller details, no. So as far as seeking self-improvement, everyone needs to, this is a reason why you're here today, is sometimes you just need a refresher of getting the mental mind going. And sometimes somebody will say something that's just going to be like, oh, I had a problem within my company. I never thought of it that way until, I heard that from Melissa. So different things like that. So always look for seek self-improvement. You need to know who your soldiers, and you need to look out for their welfare as well. And so when they say soldiers, those are kind of the people that work underneath you. If your soldiers think that you're going to hang them out to dry when, say, you're the CEO and your board of directors comes in and they start grilling you and you throw someone under the bus, the rest of that level of management, they're not going to trust you. So you do need to work and look out for them. You need to keep your soldiers informed, and one of my big pet peeves is communication within a company. That makes, that helps out in so many ways. Your soldiers, they trust you, they're informed, they feel more secure having that knowledge. And the other thing is, the internet is out there with so many social media. If you're not telling them, they're going to be reading something else somewhere else. So always keep that level of communication open. You also need to set the example. You can't go around telling everybody they need to, working at Walt Disney World, you can't, they tell all of the workers, it's your job to clean up the trash. It's not just the custodial workers. So that goes with management. So if a manager walks by and there's an ice cream wrapper on the ground, they're responsible for picking that up. And if as a cast member and we see a manager just walk right by it, that's not setting a very good example. You're not living the company culture with that specific company. You also need to be able to make sound and timely decisions. You need to develop a sense of responsibility in your subordinates. So we're going to go ahead and look at some situational leadership. So that's going to entail, that's telling a leadership, selling, participating, and delegating. So just to go into each one of these, just to spend a few moments, we're going to start with the telling. So this focuses highly on tasks rather than the relationship with the employee. As maybe the relationship may not exist yet. It's a new employee. So this is, you're going to tell them, hey, can you lead this project? Can you lead this project? Or I really need this done, and go for it. The second one is going to be your selling. So selling is going to address the follower who has developed some competence with an improved commitment. The third one is participating. And participating leadership addresses the follower who is now competent at the job, but remains somewhat inconsistent and is not yet fully committed. So they're doing what they need to do, but maybe they miss a deadline for an hour or two, or there may be other situations, but they're not that gung-ho bought into your beliefs and your vision. The fourth one is delegating. Now, delegating is the ultimate goal. So you want a follower who's going to feel empowered and competent enough to just take that ball and they run with it with minimal supervision. So, like I said, what I said earlier is once you get that realm of people, that contact of people in your company, if you're the CEO and you've got your vice presidents working underneath you, you want to make them, tell them what they need to know and let them run with it. And then, obviously do some minimal check-ins and making sure that the project and the goal is on task. So just to look at the personal inventory, what abilities are able to influence followers and bring them to accept the leader's vision as their own? And which of these qualities do you possess? And which of these qualities do you need to develop? So just take a moment and look at, and just kind of think about through that list that we talked about, the honesty, the visionary, the forward thinking. And just kind of keep this in mind. And if you want to jot some notes down as you go along, that's perfectly acceptable. Because at the end of this, we want you to develop an action plan. Not that you sat here for an hour or 45 minutes to an hour, but you actually got something from it and you're taking away, your takeaway is going to be an action item. So an introduction to the Cruz and Posner theory here is, you can just read that. They're going to model the way, inspire a shared vision, challenge the process, enable others to act, and encourage the heart. So here's a personal inventory, a little bit more thorough than what we talked about earlier. So you can see the first few are the same: honesty, forward-looking, competent, inspiring. It also goes into supportive, straightforward, dependable, cooperative, determined, imaginative, ambitious, courageous, caring, mature, loyal, self-controlled, and independent. So go ahead and just take a moment to write down the words. Maybe choose about the top 3 to 5 words that you feel represent you. And then on the other side of the paper or below, do 3 to 5 of these words you think you need to work on. And like I said, going back to the earlier slide, is a leader is always looking for self-improvement. All right, now that you've got where your strengths are and where you need to improve, I don't like to say weaknesses, just areas of improvement, we're going to talk about how to create an action plan as a leader. So the first thing is you're going to set your leadership goals. So just go ahead and take another moment here. If you want to think through a couple of goals you need to work on within your company, your personal life, your professional life, I'll go ahead and just give you just a few seconds here to go ahead and write some leadership goals down. And so some of these leadership goals can be just something simple as opening up more communications among your team, or delegating more responsibilities, or being more specific in what you're asking your employees to do. One of the sayings or thoughts that I remember reading, and it's so relevant, is, as a leader, if you're talking to your employee and they're not doing what they're supposed to do, it may not be the employee's fault. It may be your fault for not training them correctly. So you always need to look at that aspect of it as well. So maybe they don't understand what you're looking for and you need to provide a little bit more initial guidance. All right, so now we're going to address the goals. So you have your goal. And what are some steps you can take to address those? What are the doable action items? And you need to put a date in there as well, when you expect to complete these. Because if not, it's just going to linger out there and you'll never get it done. The third is to seek inspiration. Sometimes you coming to a webinar or a workshop is always, like I said, one avenue of just listening to how somebody else deals with the problem, and you can seek inspiration that way. Sometimes you just need a vacation and let your mind work too. So either way, choose what you like. The fourth one is to choose a role model. So if you have an idea of a goal you like, say improve communications within your company, find someone, maybe someone in a different company, or that's doing that really well. What is, XYZ company doing? Are they having monthly town hall meetings with their employees, or just quarterly, or are they doing weekly newsletters? Or is the employee and boss, are they having one-on-one meetings every once a week so that everyone stays on task on what the critical goals are for the company for that year? There's different ways. So choose a role model and mimic that plan. You don't have to invent the wheel for everything. If you find a business plan that someone else is doing, or just a communications plan that's working that you hear of, you can mimic it. You can steal that. It's not anything new. Seek experience. So you want to find someone that's had that, as far as the role model goes, who's had that experience and that they're producing what you're looking for. And the last one is to create a personal mission statement. And that may seem, well, why do I have to do that? But, your company has a mission statement. So why don't you have a mission statement? Like, what do you want to do with your life? And that should fit into what you're doing as your company. It should fit into what you're volunteering. It should fit into what drives your personal interests and life and how you spend your free time. So now, how do we model the way? Because one of the things we talked about earlier was you have to set the example. So remember that the best leaders are examples of what they want their followers to be. So like I said, going back to the Walt Disney World example, is you can't stand up there and preach cleaning up the park and then walk by all the trash yourself. Because that obviously is an example of, well, obviously you don't find that so important, so why am I worried about doing it? So by definition, a leader is in the lead. They're right up front, and they're ready to take the heat if something goes wrong. So if something does go wrong, so a true leader is never going to blame his followers, even if, in fact, they failed. You're not going to throw them under the bus. So the true leader is going to take the blame, but then they're also going to address how to correct the problems that arose. And going back to MBA school, that's one of the true takeaways 10 years later, I remember is, I don't have to know the answer to everything. I'm not going to stand up there and lie about what I don't know, because they will find out. If I'm making a presentation in front of, venture capitalists asking for money and I lie about something, I don't know what their expertise is. That may be their expertise, and they're going to see right through me. And do you think I'm going to get any of their money to help me start my business? Absolutely not. But if I stand up there and say, that's a great question. I do not have an answer for you right now, but I will get one for you as soon as possible. That leaves a lot more credibility. So, and in fact, if it's a situation where something messed up, you say, you just have to take it and say, yes, that was an error. Either apologize, whatever your personal stance is on that. But then go ahead and start thinking, well, how can we fix this situation? You're like, yes, you're right, Mr. So-and-so, that is an error. I'm sorry we overlooked it, but this is what I'm going to do to fix that problem, and it will be fixed the next time I see you. Or I'll follow up with you in a few days and then get you that answer. So another topic here is to determine your way. So now once you've chosen your role model, study what qualities made them successful. What did they do? You learn about the challenges and how they met those, because most people didn't just get to the top or become a leader easily. There were challenges, and there were a lot of fights that they had to do. And learning how they overcome and met those challenges will help you out significantly, because you may run into those same situations. And learn about the ideas and philosophies that drove them. Kind of like that personal mission statement. Why are you doing what you do? What drives you there? And what drove them to where they are as well. So to be an inspirational role model, you're going to have honesty, integrity, and deal with everyone fairly. And others are going to see that. So it's hard to be an inspirational role model when you have a favorite employee and you obviously treat them very special, and they get to, do a lot of other things that other members in the company don't do. The employees see that. They're like, well, yeah, but he's such and such favorite, and well, it doesn't really matter what I do, because I'm not going to get that job anyway, because such and such is going to. So just kind of remember that, to deal with everyone fairly. Also is to listen to criticism, but also consider the source. So this is a reality check here, is, everyone likes to complain. It's easier to complain. And some of that criticism is validated, and some of it is personal, or it just may be one-sided, and it may not be quite what you relevant, I should say. But you still have to react with each person with integrity as well. So how to influence others' perspective. So now you've got your goal, you've got your action plan, but you want to get the other people on your team to be on your side in your vision. How do you do that? And it's kind of simple here. So the most powerful influence you can have is often not trying to influence someone. That sounds a little counterintuitive here. So how that goes is, when people believe you are open to their suggestions, they will work harder even if they disagree with the methods or goals. So one of the things, so you have, for example, you're the CEO and you have a new marketing campaign that is coming out, and you want everybody in your company to be your brand ambassador. You want them excited about this new product and this new change that may come with it. And if you say to your employees, okay, this is how it's going to be, we've got a new change coming January 1st, and this is how it's going to be, and you need to do this, and you need to do this, and you need to do this. Guess what? It's a you, not a we, not you didn't ask for their input, you're just telling them. And people have a tendency to reject that. So how do you do that? Sometimes it's just simple as delivering the communication. So it may be before you have your big launch, you start the conversation out of, for example, we started looking into doing direct deposit for all checks instead of mailing out paper checks, because it's costly. It's very costly for a company. So everyone has to have direct deposit. This is a problem, because we're going to save, say, $200,000 a year, and that will only and cost will only increase, here on out, right, with postage and everything else. So you need to convince people that they need to move over to direct deposit, but you can't tell them. You're telling them because you're giving them a deadline. As of from January 1st to March 31st, they have to be converted. If not, they're not getting a paper check. Right? But do you go and you tell people you have to get converted, you have to get converted? No, people don't like that. So what do? You ask questions, and this may be just from, a small team. It may be from the whole company of, we are getting rid of paper checks. We are moving to a direct deposit. What type of options would you like? Now, this is only going to be relevant to the people who are not currently on direct deposit. So hopefully you have your HR staff who's already investigated and researched a couple of options, such as maybe a prepaid or deposited onto like a debit card situation. Or you help people actually get signed up with checking accounts, no cost or low cost checking accounts. So you have to explore these topics. You have to give people time and an action plan, and also you can be forthcoming with that information. And so the reason why we're doing this is it's going to save us $200,000 a year or $200,000 a month or whatever those costs are. And what is that benefit to the employees as well? So you need to let them know that. So your vision, you want to choose your vision, you want to communicate your vision, inspire that shared vision, and identify the benefit for others. And I'm going to go ahead and stop this webinar since no one's here anyways.